on to the next story here, and this is another one that has people kind of upset, but it's interesting. Another unendorsement, sort of, kind of like. So I told you guys before about the Uncommitted campaign. They decided to be uncommitted until at least through the Democratic primary and not support Joe Biden. But they never said that they would not support the Democratic Party in the general. And as we saw, as time went by, they really tried to, I guess, push Kamala Harris to have an arms embargo, to not send any more arms to Israel. They didn't have a lot of asks, but the big one was to stop sending the arms. We fast forward to the Democratic National Convention, and one of the leaders of that movement, Representative Rua from Georgia, she wanted to speak at the DNC. She had a speech. It was already vetted. And at the end of the speech, she was endorsing Kamala Harris. And unfortunately, the Kamala Harris campaign, they decided to allow an Israeli family to speak, but they would not allow a Palestinian American to speak on the stage. So they protested there. There were cries, and they went on a number of TV shows and all that kind of jazz. But at the end of the day, I told you the leaders of that party were very much entrenched, of that campaign, entrenched in the Democratic Party. And Arua is a Democrat representative in the Georgia State House. Abbas is a Democrat delegate. And of course, one of the other leaders, Layla, is Rashida Tlaib's sister. So I had tried to explain to you guys, like, I didn't think they were ever really gonna not support the Democratic Party. Abandon Harris is the exact opposite. It used to be abandon Biden, but then they switched to abandon Harris. And abandon Harris, they are not supporting Kamala Harris at all. They've been very vocal about it, and that's why you don't hear corporate media cover it as much. But we will be interviewing Abandon Harris next week on RBN's Roundtable. So Uncommitted has released a statement. They also are not endorsing Kamala Harris. They're also not endorsing Donald Trump. So similar to the Teamsters, but a little bit different. And I just want to read part of this here. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but the part that I really want you to see. We're down here at the last paragraph. Vice President Harris' unwillingness to shift on unconditional weapons policy or even make a clear campaign statement in supporting of upholding existing U.S. and international human rights law has made it impossible for us to endorse her. At this time, our movement, 1, cannot endorse Vice President Harris. 2, opposes a Donald Trump presidency whose agenda includes plans to accelerate the killing in Gaza while intensifying the suppression of anti-war organizing. And 3, is not recommending a third-party vote in the presidential election, especially as third-party votes in key swing states could help inadvertently deliver a Trump presidency given our country's broken electoral college system. So they are not endorsing Kamala Harris. They're obviously not endorsing Donald Trump, but they're not endorsing third parties because they believe that a third party endorsement would help Donald Trump. I'm going to say this again. They believe a third party endorsement would help Donald Trump. So essentially, they're still supporting Kamala Harris. Does anybody understand that? The word salad that they came up with there. Now, I have interviewed, a member from the Uncommitted movement who told me that a lot of the members involved in this do not agree with the decisions that the leadership has been making. So just FYI. This part right here, I think, is important as well. They said, for months, we have urged Vice President Harris to shift her policy on Gaza so we could mobilize voters in key states to save lives in our democracy. The DNC and Vice President Harris's campaign fumbled even the small gesture to unite our party ahead of November by rejecting the simple request for a Palestinian American speaker. Now the vice president's campaign is courting Dick Cheney while sidelining disillusioned anti-war voices, pushing them to consider third-party options or to sit this important election out. So do you hear what they just said? They're telling you all the things that Kamala's team has done wrong with their movement, but they still want you to support Kamala. What I tell you, I told you these people are not going to give up their careers, their Democrat careers. Abbas doesn't want to give up being a DNC delegate. Rua, I think she has political ambitions where she probably wants to make her way out of the Georgia State House and into Congress. Like I told you. They go on to say here, let me go forward to this part right here. I'm sorry, it's too funny. In our assessment, our movement's best hope for change lies in growing our anti-war organizing power, and that power would be severely undermined by a Trump administration. 77% of Democrats and 61% of Americans oppose weapons aid for Israel's assault on Gaza, which is preventing a ceasefire and blocking the reunification of Palestinian and Israeli captives with their families. So what they left out of this data is that also there's a significant number of Republicans that oppose it. It's not just Democrats. So long story short, you guys see what they're trying to do. And I want to show you a little bit further here. Representative Rua, she responded to the statement. This is an incredibly generous statement, and it's a travesty that the Harris campaign still couldn't meet these basic asks. Uncommitted turned out over 100,000 voters in Michigan and almost 1 million around the country. Meeting these asks wouldn't even be a risk. So she's talking about, her disappointment, I guess, with Kamala not doing this. It is a net positive across the board. Meeting with families shows care for them. Ending weapons transfer to Israel is an incredibly popular position, the legally sound position, and the right thing to do. So again, I agree with what she's saying. We're also expecting reports on this soon. It just makes no sense to me. And she's referring to internal investigations of Biden's arms transfers to Israel near completion. They're talking about that, like there's a watchdog for the State Department and the Pentagon. They're preparing to release investigations scrutinizing Biden's arms, right? So the weapons. Our job as elected officials is to work as hard as we can to earn every vote. The thing I've heard over and over again, and a sentiment I feel, is that it's not clear if Harris even wants our support. At this point, the ball is in the campaign's court. I would say, I think that Kamala Harris's campaign has moved forward with other groups. I think they're trying to win with other voters, particularly in Michigan. They're reaching out to white women heavily. They are reaching out to the suburban areas. They're not relying on getting your support, which is why, my warning to Black voters, I continue to say this, there is going to come a time when the Democratic Party doesn't need our vote to win. Just a reality. This is why you need to have demands. Because once it gets to that point where they don't need our vote to win, will they ever even engage with us? Think about that for a second. There's going to come a time. So I think they have a strategy in Kamala's campaign to rely on it, to try not to rely on Muslim voters. And if that's the case, that's going to be really sad. But I think that's what's happening. Now, listen to this part. As much as I wish any of us can fix it all, we're focused on fighting apathy, keeping folks engaged, and turning out as many voters as possible. If you're in Georgia, join us on Saturday. We'll have 2 shifts and my mom is cooking. So after all that jazz and the statement, she wants you to join her to canvass on Saturday. For the same administration that wouldn't let her speak on the stage, discriminated against Palestinian Americans, which is what happened, the same administration that won't stop sending the arms, you're going to go out and canvass for them. Rua Roman, Democrat for HD 97. So see, she's running. Does everybody see this? So she must be up for re-election. Y'all see? Does everybody see what I was talking about? Now, obviously, when these local candidates go out and they canvass, they're canvassing. She's part of the Democratic Party. They're still going to be supporting the presidential candidate. I know, because when Ayanna Pressley was canvassing, they did that same thing to us. So what the hell? What did I tell you about political aspirations? What I tell you? The comments are funny. On Instagram, this one's funny because they shared it on Instagram, their statement as well. Look at some of the comments. Were y'all hacked because you are not genuinely making this statement? Like, am I some kind of dark mirror realm? What is happening? This is so disappointment. Personally, I am no longer non-committed. I will be voting for Dr. Jill Stein. Look, these are their peeps. Look, you prove the Democrats right if you keep this statement up. If you choose this path, they win. The people who push cop cities and police violence and genocide and ignore the vital issues of climate change and a slew of other issues, those people will win. And you help no one. You're practically encouraging people to either vote for Kamala. Third party is the only option because fascism is already here, whether it's red or blue. We are all screwed. Look, they're getting it all from all sides. Not endorsing Harris or Trump is not enough. That's just throwing away your votes. You can endorse a third party candidate who actually cares about all of us. It's a number of comments, you guys. But what did I tell you? I think that unfortunately it seems like some of the leaders decided to use this as an opportunity for themselves and to promote their own races or whatever. And you see what's happening with that. So not giving an official endorsement of Kamala Harris, but still telling people they're not going to endorse third party because that's going to help Donald Trump, even though I don't know how many times I have to say this. But the reality is a lot of us that vote third party would not support Kamala or Donald Trump.